Sounds like
That's done, we can show that.
whoever is that is going to have to be muted. Okay, we got to figure out who's in and who's out here. Doug, Joan, Brian, Christina. Carol, did you attend all of the public hearing meetings for this?
For Southern Tier.
The Southern Tier.
I'm not certain.
January 5th was the first hearing.
And she was not there.
No,
Okay.
I wasn't there and I wasn't sworn in until the 10th.
So what you can do is observe. I don't know if you're eligible for Stone Bank because I'm not involved in that one. Fred handles that, but you can observe the Southern Tier part. Okay, so Doug, Joan, Brian, Christina, Fred, Ben is here
I
till
wish I had my fucking headphones. I don't think I do.
3. Linda, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know who the last 3 were in. I'm assuming Linda was here. I don't know who were the last.
No.
I think I did, Doug.
No,
I-
you were here before. Ben
Oh,
and
here,
Linda.
Christina. Oh, were
Ben
you?
and
Might-
Linda
it
was
might
the
be
last-
me. Okay, I'm just gonna, I'm
or
sorry.
Kate.
Do you mind if I
Banks,
just
Ben and
have it
Linda.
on? Because I don't have my,
Okay,
So you can hear better.
no, I can hear, you're fine. I normally put my headphones in, so you don't have.
Do you need another volunteer?
no, I think you're fine, Linda. Christina, did you attend all of the public hearings?
I don't know. I'm not
Um,
sure, which is why I'd like to not participate as an active member of LUPC right now. Lucy and I are working on it.
Okay,
I did and I
Alright.
didn't. Did I fit with some of the regulations about you have to be at this,
About
um,
the brown towel and
all the rehab.
okay,
I'm working on getting rehabbed, literally and figuratively.
okay. So what we'll have are the active members tonight will be Doug, Joan, Brian, Fred, Ben, Peter, Kate, and Linda. That is 8. And
Kathy and Tripp
Gonna
have
have to
joined, so
observe.
they'll be observing, I guess.
yeah, others will have to observe. This is land use planning. That's pretty obvious. And we have tonight. One is the Southern Tier Affordable Housing Project, ERI 730. That's a post-public hearing review. Our job is to review the project, discuss the applicant's offers, possible conditions, consider the benefits and detriments, and decide on a recommendation to the full commission. We're going to get this done tonight because it is scheduled for deliberation on Thursday night. The second item is Stone Bank Restaurant. That's also a post-public hearing review, and we have to accomplish the same tasks, but it's not on for deliberation this Thursday. So if we don't get to it or don't complete it, it can be completed at a subsequent meeting. So we will get Southern Tier done, and then Fred is chairing Stone Bank because I have a conflict, and Fred will make a call as to whether we proceed or defer to another night. So starting with Southern Tier, Alex, can you tell us what came in since the close of the public hearing before the written record closed?
Yep. So the hearing closed on the 19th and the record closed today at 5. There was an agreement with the applicant that if responses to the remaining commissioner questions had been provided by last Thursday, then we'd go forward with LUPC tonight. So that's what we did. We have received some new information, including in the period between Thursday and now. But the new information is all listed here. So we have the response to the remaining commissioner and staff questions that related to various features of the project in documents, including the elevation drawings and floor plans for the proposed dormer units. Those were the units that would be added to the top floor of the 3-unit buildings to make them 4-unit buildings. I think the LEPC should clarify that would require the applicant coming back for a modification later, or whether that is going to be considered part of the current proposal because that would depend on their getting funding for those units later on. They provided the section plan showing the vegetated knoll in context of the community building. Information we'd asked about whether the southern woodlands lot to the north could potentially be accessed in the future from Quantapug Road. The applicant stated that's a private road, so that wouldn't be possible. There was information about the feasibility of transplanting existing ground cover to elsewhere in the site, who would own and maintain the utilities, efforts to mitigate headlight intrusion, and some other issues, including archaeological surveys or investigations on the site and the plant list. You have updated offers, which we'll look at today. Letter from Horsley Witten regarding the location of the future access road, as was discussed at the close of the hearing. That road was located in order to minimize the intrusion into environmental areas that would be part of the future project to the north. Horsley Witten just sort of reiterated that and explained it further in their letter. Mass Historic project notification form had been submitted to the state, and the state responded to that last year. That for some reason didn't end up in the records. That was added to the record. I will say that in the last week, we've discovered that there is an archaeological resource on the northern property line. It's a boulder that was used to, I understand, to grind corn and other materials.
Oh,
So the applicant has added an offer, which we'll look at, to conduct a phase 1 archaeological survey of the area around the boulder. And that if that results in any changes to the project, that would have to come back to LEPC. Currently, the boulder is outside of the development area, but I'll show that in the next slide. So in terms of the dormer units, if they were to do that in the future, they provided also an updated nitrogen calculation that would account for that. The applicant also provided a timeline of public meetings over the last few years related to this project. There were about 12 or 14 public meetings, including one late last year that the abutters were all invited to. We had asked for the initial request for proposals for the property that the town issued in 2021, which is in the record now. We also received a lot of letters from the public today, so those aren't all up on the website yet. There's actually about 50 letters. Some of them went to other staff members, so those will be updated by sometime tomorrow. And then the updated staff report incorporates all of this new information except for the archaeological stuff, which we'll add. So this is the site plan. The boulder that I mentioned is located somewhere in this area. It's basically right on Old Holmes Hole Road on the edge. So that would be outside of the development area and also within, I believe, within the area that the applicant plans to have conserved. But again, this may indicate a larger settlement that had existed at one time in this area. So again, the boulder's about there. There's actually a paragraph in the DCPC decision for the Southern Woodlands property that it's possible that the western part of this big area up here had at one time been a settlement. So it's possible that that boulder is a remnant of that. And the offer related to the boulder, what we'll get to in the offers, but that explains what the applicant would do to account for that. That's all the new information.
Okay, why don't we go to offers?
Okay. I'm sorry. I think also our housing planner had some comments that she wanted to add at the start of the meeting. So I guess, Laura, if you wanted to
That's fine.
chime in.
Sure. Thanks, Alex.
Okay, hi, Laura.
Hi, Doug. Is that all right if I speak?
Sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I came in partway through the Southern Tier process with the MVC, but I've been participating through my previous job and as a community member in the Southern Tier public meetings since the very beginning, since the first one. I think this is a really carefully considered program. I've been really impressed by the process. And I do want to stress that this meets a vitally important housing need for the community. So it's a really great opportunity for the island. Thank you.
Okay. We have the offers. Thank you, Laura. We have the offers up on the screen. Some of these we should be very familiar with because they are virtually identical to Meshacket. Number one comes right out of Meshacket. I'm sure there are no questions about it. Number two, it will be, I guess, all electric, PV solar panels, 6 electric vehicle charging stations, and conduits for future. No fossil fuels on site. Number three, 3 fully accessible ADA apartments and universal design principles. That's a typo there in principles, PLES it should be, throughout. Number four, they are committing that they'll all be rental apartments. Unfortunately, we don't have the regulatory agreements that will be recorded as far as I know. Do we have them in the record, Alex? The proposed?
I don't think so. No.
No, they won't be generated until we go to the financial closing.
Okay, can you, since it means nothing to us if we don't know what the terms of those agreements are, Craig, can you give us some idea of at least what the key substantive points are?
So there will be various regulatory agreements, actually multiple ones, because each funding program kind of has its own scenario. So the town will have its own affordability covenant. The state will have several based on funding. The terms will vary between each regulatory agreement. Some require 30 years, some require 45. The town will likely require one that coincides with the term of the lease.
And these are all in the sense of assuring affordability of these units?
Yes. So as long as they are in place, then the terms of those with their varying affordability limits remain in place.
Okay. Next is abiding by the regulations where they don't have a choice. Oh, this is important. They won't, and it's kind of inconsistent with one of our conditions. You're saying you're not allowed to evict a tenant if their income increases beyond how they initially qualified, but you're committing, as you did with Meshacket, that the household will pay 30% of gross income in rent.
Correct.
Next one is try to preserve the trees. And number 7, can you scroll up a little? Alex, yeah. Number 7. Number 7 you have to do because it's a requirement of natural heritage, I believe. Number 8, no fertilizer. Number 9, permeable surface under parking spaces. And then number 10, we get to the water quality mitigation. Now, Alex, I don't know, is Sherry on the call? I can't.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I would say that this is the same language that was applied to the Meshacket project, except in part in the alternative under or they would be retrofitting systems rather than tying systems into the sewer. That was the only change from Meshacket.
Sherry is here, Alex.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, Sherry, you vetted this. This meets our policy in terms of the numbers. They upgraded the numbers to from 45 to 48 units if they get funding for that. I take it this is consistent with, as Alex said, you can confirm this is consistent with what we did at Meshacket. And are the numbers okay?
Yes, I met with them several times and this is consistent. This meets our policy.
Okay. Let's go on to the next one then. It would be nice to not have to obsess about a nitrogen offer for a change. Okay.
Can you just go back? Was that at their election? Can you just go back to the intro to that thing?
I believe it is at their election.
Right, that's not crystal clear. And is that, did we, could somebody remind me, please, with Mashakit, that was also at the applicant's choice?
It was, yep.
Okay, so
Yeah.
could we just clarify that at its election to either or something like that? Great, thank you.
Let's go down to number 11. Okay, we've already discussed that. They are going to limit the hours of the community house to nothing later than 11 p.m. And this is, I think, an attempt to mitigate the potential for noise and light pollution spilling over to the four abutting neighbors to the east. Number 13, create a walking path with a vegetated buffer along the future or the potential future access road. Will this walking path be independent of if you create the walking path when you create the walking path and vegetated buffer? Will it still exist if you ever get approval to create the access road? Will that be independent of the access road?
Yes, we view it being, I mean, we'll have to work with the town, but because they'll ultimately build the road, but we view the walking path and the vegetated buffer as being in conjunction with the road. So the road would not replace the walking path.
Okay, so it'll be on the eastern side of the road. Okay.
Yes.
And
And
Doug,
go ahead.
I just want to go backwards for a second. On the 11 p.m., I'm assuming that the town-wide restriction is 11 and not just the business versus the residential or something, or I don't
Yes,
know.
I looked that up in the town code, and it actually says that as of 11 p.m., noise has to be reduced to a level that cannot be readily heard more than 150 feet away. And rather than toying with the idea that they just have to like close the doors and try and keep it calm, we'll just end everything at 11.
Right. Again, for clarification, 11 to me seems a little bit late for a residential neighborhood. And just could you clarify the kind of events that might last until 11?
Honestly, I don't envision there being many. You know, it's hard to fathom. There's, you know, we wouldn't be allowing any alcohol or anything of that nature in the building anyway. So I don't see a lot of people doing a kid's birthday party at 11 o'clock at night. You know, maybe a family reunion with that, but again, no alcohol as part of our general rules of affordable housing and low-income housing tax credits.
Okay, thanks. I wouldn't press that unless somebody else was interested, because I have suggested, I don't know if it'll show up, a condition which is some sort of noise mitigating fence behind the meeting common room, community house, which we can get to later.
Okay. Linda, you have your hand up.
Yes, with regard to the vegetated buffer, I was going to suggest to you anyway that you consider reinforcing, where appropriate, the vegetated buffer that runs along the possible future road, because we would surely require that of you when you can, but if you come back for the road. And it's cheaper to put young things in there now. than to wait till later when you might have to plant something bigger. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that I hope that vegetated buffer takes into account the possible future road.
I think that's the purpose of it.
That is exactly what the plan is.
Okay, good thinking.
Okay, the last one is the one in red here. Applicant commits to conduct an archaeological survey of an area agreed to by the tribe Historic Preservation Office in relation to the boulder located in the northern edge of the property. Any changes to the project that result from the survey shall be subject to review and approval by land use planning. A summary of the report will be provided. Okay. Any commissioner comments on that?
Just want to point out that we wanted a survey because a lot of these things are confidential when they're done. So we wanted a survey summary of it.
Right.
We had quite a discussion about the community house before. I just wonder, I still think, I just don't see what it's doing there.
Well, that's something to discuss at, if you want to propose something else, we can talk about it later. Kate, you have your hand up.
Yeah, my question is if there is an archaeological issue on the northern edge, do we need to require something that covers more of the property? Make sure that we aren't missing something that would be where we're talking about disturbing stuff.
Well, they have to identify an area agreed to with the tribe. A historic preservation officer, I would trust that individual to identify an area and if need be, pipe up if more has to be done. But I don't know.
They filed a PNF with Mass Historic, and they have an approval for that for the building site.
I would say that just mention that was done before, from what I understand, before Mass Historic knew about the boulder. But that would have been their sign off on the building envelope.
Right, but they weren't looking at the boulder area when they were looking at the building envelope.
Yep.
They generally look at the entire site. So the property itself.
Okay, Fred, you still have your hand up, or is that just from last?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Let's look at possible conditions. I don't think we need to vote on these independently. I don't think the first one shouldn't say model ground lease. These aren't ground leased properties. I don't think these are the standard rental.
Yes, we will be leasing the ground from the town, but the units themselves will just be a lease, a standard rental lease.
I don't know what Alex meant by that, but it's possible he meant year-round occupancy as defined in that document. So that, we know that it means you can rent it for X number of weeks, but not any more than that. Allowed to go on holiday for 2 weeks and sublet it for 2 weeks.
I just copied that from the Mashakit conditions. I just overlooked that.
Okay. Unless someone wants to add something to clarify that you can rent to a third party for 2 weeks or some period of time, we'll leave it the way it is.
Well, could I suggest that, I see Laura's hand.
Okay, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, the IHT ground lease specifies that year-round occupancy is defined as living in the residence as your primary residence for 11 months out of the year. So I think, and there is no allowance to rent out. My understanding is that, and I would ask Philippe to comment on that you cannot sublet out the apartments. So I think the reference was to the 11 months occupancy, but I think if it worked for Mashakit to just refer to, as defined in the IHT model ground lease, I think that was the goal.
Well, I think we're better off if we don't have to go to other documents, and that if it's a standalone. So a year-on occupancy 11 months, primary residence, 11 months per year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
that
good
does-
enough for now. Can Alex just check the language and put it in as it appears in that other document so that we have it for Thursday, whenever?
Craig?
I will say that many of our programs do not allow
Any rentals?
any rentals. Like this says 11 months, which kind of implies that they could rent it for a month. That would be a violation of their lease.
Right, then maybe we don't need any clarification.
Well, if we want to make it real clear, it should be year-round occupancy as primary residence.
That would be fantastic.
Okay.
They can have a second home, I guess.
That won't affect this.
Doubt they're qualified, but you never know.
Number two, is a conversion. They have to come back to land use planning.
I don't think they should be allowed to convert ever. We're not going through all this so some guy can buy a house. We're going through it so there'll be places for people to rent, workforce housing, etc. And boy, I feel very strongly about that.
Well, Craig, is there any possibility these could ever, given the regulatory agreements you're going to have to sign and the covenant with the town, is there any possibility they could ever be converted?
I would say it's highly unlikely. When we want to do home ownership, we build home ownership. Rentals are an entirely different set of programs. In order to move it to home ownership, we would have to pay off all of the secondary debt plus its accrued interest. It would be most likely financially impossible to convert it to home ownership, affordable home ownership.
Why don't we strike it and deal with it in our very last or second to last or whatever it is condition that says any change of use, change of blah, blah,
Right.
including home ownership.
Yeah,
And then it would come back to the full commission who could, as Tripp suggests, say, nope, not a good idea.
we don't even have to say including conversion of home ownership
As
because
long as it's clear, Doug, that going from rental.
Rewrite that.
we're not going to put it in at all, Trip, because it's not necessary. Number three, that doesn't really make sense because nobody's owning a unit. That's a holdover from the home ownership units in Mashakit, isn't it?
Correct.
Wouldn't somebody be owning the unit?
This is rental. I mean,
The development entity will own all of the units, which as a rental property kind of dictates that we're responsible for all maintenance and upkeep.
okay, So-
That should just be clearer.
right.
Management companies responsible.
Project,
And be the owner of the development.
right.
Yeah,
Owner of the development will do it.
And it's become item 2.
Right. We'll
renumber.
we'll renumber when we get through this. Okay. Number 4. There is no IHT ground lease. Could just be restricted as affordable housing in perpetuity. That should take care of it.
Should that include higher than 80% in that 30 to 80%? Because we have 110% unit, or are they considered affordable with a small a instead of a big A?
Don't know.
I'd suggested a change up to 110% in that when I reviewed these with Adam and Alex and Rich. We're going to restrict those just like we restrict all the others. So it's quite honestly, we'll have people below 30%. So these are kind of more maximum tiers. So it's maximum of 30% and below, maximum of 110% or below. And they'll get basically the same types of restrictions.
so basically every unit gets the same restriction. So this italics is not necessary.
Right.
And I would also add that capital A affordable, capital A housing has a defined meaning I'd be happy if it just said affordable housing.
Lowercase.
Yeah, lowercase. Your proposal makes it crystal clear what we're talking about.
Right. Because if they get approved,
That's-
it will be approved.
That's not what you've testified to. You've said that people can earn more than the specified area median income as long as they spend or contribute 30% of their income.
Not at initial occupancy.
So we could just add at initial occupancy at the end of the sentence.
Yeah.
Okay, so my other question is, after initial occupancy and people start making a lot of money, where does that, the difference between the initial cost of the apartment and the 30%, say you're making $1 million, where is the difference between the initial cost, 300,000 that we're not going to charge, where does that money go to?
So
Adam, could you please thank you.
yeah, I would. So if somebody is making $1 million, their rent for the year would be $300,000.
Right. So where does that, where does that, profit, I guess you call it, where does that go to?
That will pay down debt. It's a limited dividend entity that's doing this as per the rules of the comprehensive 40B projects. So there's very limited amounts that can come back to the developer itself. It's capped.
So when the debt's paid, when the debt 30 years from now, when the debt's paid off, where would that money go to?
In theory, it stays within the development. So it would preclude us from, it would go into a reserve, a replacement reserve that would help us do future renovations. So a limited amount can be distributed. The rest would end up likely going into a replacement reserve after all debt is paid off. I find it highly unlikely someone would want to pay $300,000 and go through annual income reviews to stay there.
No, I mean, I'm just saying that's a number. I mean, but there will be people who make a little bit more than what they made when they first moved in there after being there for 20 or 30 years. And, people progressively make more money as they get older.
Yeah. So there's a detailed waterfall of fees and then interest and then soft debt loan payments to the town and to the state that would happen with those funds.
Okay, thanks.
Alex Albert, can you make me the co-host? Because I can't mute anybody.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 5 is right out of probably Mashakit, and it's pretty standard. Number 6 requires annual income certification. Number 7.
So,
it's the
Doug,
same.
if I may on that one, again, the housing authority isn't doing our annual management of this. That's our property manager. So if housing authority is just kind of a generic housing authority versus the Dukes County Housing Authority, it's fine, but I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that.
Well, will this manager be state certified as a
Yes, they will be a licensed property manager that is familiar with affordable housing. Yeah.
okay?
Should we say or by another certified agency?
What should it say?
It says state certified housing authority. Is that what it will be?
Affordable
I mean,
housing.
they are a property manager. They're not a housing authority.
So it should say state certified property affordable housing manager for affordable projects or what?
Affordable housing.
Okay, so it should say state certified housing manager for affordable housing.
By that manager. All subsequent contract, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's one last one there. Yeah. Okay,
Same problem, next line.
right.
Pretty sure we made these changes for Mashakit as well.
These were taken from the Mashakit decision.
Yeah, we may have missed the housing authority since it was lowercase and not uppercase to kind of make it a defined term. So
We got
I think this works.
What's a certified housing manager? Isn't it superintendent a better word? Who's certifying the house manager?
It says
They're-
state certified.
They're licensed by the state to manage rental properties.
And that's really necessary.
Yes,
How much do they could get a year?
it's in our operating budget. It's generally in the 4 to 5% of gross rents area.
Jesus. I think we ought to have a discussion on that later.
Okay, let's move on. The amenities, that comes right out of the shacket. All requirements to count towards
Yeah, like
the town of Oak
Town of
Bluff.
Oak Bluffs, Town of Oak Bluffs for number 8.
Oh, right.
I mean, I'm sure the town of Edgartown would love to get the credits, but wouldn't really be fair. Okay, final landscape plan is our standard. Final exterior lighting is our standard.
There was one in here about fertilizer that I believe would replace one of the applicant's offers.
If we, yeah, well, they say they don't want to use any fertilizer. Is that correct, Craig?
In the maintenance, obviously there'll need to be a little bit when we do our planting to get them to take root. But ongoing maintenance will be no nitrogen.
So we could take this out potentially from the condition.
We could. Why don't we take it out then? Okay, then we talk about exterior lighting, that's the standard.
I'm just wondering if you couldn't put no irrigation. I know that there was testimony, but it would be nice if it was specified.
Add a bullet.
Yeah. Well, you can add it under that landscaping plan, I think.
I have a problem with that.
Except for, getting plants to initially thrive. or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, there has to be sometimes irrigation in the very beginning.
We have a standard language for that, Linda. We say it all the time. No irrigation except as necessary to enable the plants to establish themselves.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And before we get to the rest of the standard, guys, unless there's anything non-standard, I did send to Alex a suggestion, not a, I want to hear about this possibility of building a noise abatement fence to the rear of the community house so as to further mitigate any potential sound. I know the neighbors are anxious. And perhaps if it's not required immediately, if after, within 2 years, 2 years after it's established or 1 year, if the neighbors request it, they could do it.
We leave it to the neighbors. They're definitely going to request it. What evidence do we have?
I'm not so sure, Doug, that they will, because the plan, there's the knoll, there will be the buffering landscaping along the road. The activity comes out the front door, not the back door. But I'm certainly not insisting on it, but I thought it might be not very problematic and would give the neighbors some indication that we share a potential concern about noise, which we would like to see mitigated. So that's my speech.
Perhaps we could have an LUPC review after a period of time to assess the noise problem.
That would be perfectly acceptable to me.
However you want to word it.
I would certainly expect that if noise is a problem, the occupants of the project will be complaining a lot more than the neighbors because they're all around the community building and the neighbors, the closest neighbor is 250 feet away. But if you want to propose a LUPC review a year after full occupancy, I think that's perfectly reasonable.
It seems like a kind of awkward thing to throw in there.
Yeah.
I don't recall that we've ever done such a thing before. I don't think it's necessary. As Doug said, if there's a lot of noise, the people in the development themselves are going to be the first line of defense, I think.
Well, as I suggested earlier, I thought perhaps 11 was a bit late for a residential neighborhood.
It's what the town bylaw says.
Well, this is that might be your view. My view is that this is a reasonably dense area with a single congregating point, which is a bit different than, 42 separate independent units.
Here we go again with that community housing house. What the hell do you need that for?
It's not a community housing house. It is a community space for
Isn't that nice?
5
Okay.
units.
Which
Okay.
I am very much in favor of.
Okay. There are a number of people who wish to comment about this, so let's not start just talking on our own. Ben, then Brian, and then Daryl. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I think it's fine if we do a review in a year. I'm hesitant to start fencing in portions of the property for sound because you could complain about sound coming from the community green area for kids playing out there, or other sound coming from just the apartments themselves. I don't see this community building being a huge noise generator. They don't really serve that kind of purpose. So I don't think this is necessary, but if we want to review it within a year to see if there's any noise issues that need to be resolved, I'd be fine with that.
Okay, Brian.
Yes, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't really see the necessity of this community building in affordable housing. I would like to make this building as small as possible just to accommodate a manager's office and whatever maintenance needs there are for the facility. And, that could be limited to 9 to 5 for when the manager is occupying the office. I don't know. I live in a neighborhood, but I don't have a community building, and anyone who else lives in regular neighborhoods who have community buildings. I mean, it's nice and it's groovy and, feels good. I don't see it's anywhere near why it's necessary. And I would like to reduce the expense of the overall project by making that building as absolutely small as possible. And totally limiting the hours to, no more than 6 o'clock at night.
Okay, well, that would probably be something you could propose in deliberation. And who was next? I guess Daryl, and then Fred and Laura.
Thanks, Doug. Just real quick. I mean, the community center is dug into the hillside 4 to 5 feet. So, and there's another 5 feet of knoll buffer behind it. There's plenty of sound screening there. And the thing is that our conservation area is right behind where the community center is, and that apartment building right beside it. So for us to be, we can't put in a fence within the conservation area. And there's really good sound protection that's going to be there. I think for those at the site visit, you kind of got a sense of that when we stood at the spot where the community center would be. To review if there's a noise question in a year, yeah, that might make sense, but I don't think we need to lock it into a fence if that's the direction, because it really is going to be invasive to do a fence there. And as Doug, you mentioned, or actually I think Fred mentioned it, we're actually a long way from the houses with the community center.
Okay, thank you. Fred, and then Laura.
Yes, I just wanted to say in reply to Brian that this area is where there's going to be free Wi-Fi for the residents, where kids can go to do their homework and study. It's not a frill. I mean, it just seems like there's a little bit of an attitude here that this is some sort of frill that affordable housing people shouldn't have. And I find that very offensive. It
Well,
seems to
don't-
me that
No,
these
no,
apartments
don't
are very
interrupt,
small and this gives the kids a chance to go someplace else to do their studying. The mailboxes are located there. It's not a frill. It's not something that's extra. I think it's a very important part of this project, and it's something that the town of Oak Bluffs has requested. So I think it definitely belongs here.
Okay, we don't have
It's
to have a prolonged discussion about the community room here because building, because it's going to be the subject of discussion at deliberation. It's good to get our positions out on the table, but we don't need to go back and forth a great deal about it. But so Laura and then Linda, and I'd like to move on this.
Thank you. I was going to mention the Wi-Fi as well, and I wanted to ask the applicant if, like in Mishakut, this will be the location for a generator for when the power goes out, so that the residents will have a place to go that'll have heat and electricity.
Yes, the community house will have some of its systems set up on the generator.
Thank you very much. I think that's a really important thing to note.
Linda?
Well, I just want to say that it seems that what they're doing is providing a facility that in some housing developments would be spread throughout the buildings. You know, everybody would have their own version of it. This consolidates things like the Wi-Fi in one location, which I think has economies and is a good thing.
Okay, there will be the whole project will be wired for cable, so everybody will have their own Wi-Fi if they choose to have a wireless router, but that's an individual choice. Okay, number 12 and number 13 are standard.
Is there consensus as to whether 11 is going to be added here?
I think we should put it at the end and we'll vote on the others and then vote on number 11. Put it at the end. Okay. Are there any other suggested conditions that commissioners had? Joan, did you have any others? Okay, the answer is no. Okay. All right.
Do you want a motion now, or do you want to wait until we look at the benefits and detriments?
That's what I was thinking about. I think that usually we would have a motion now on accepting or recommending accepting offers and imposing conditions if the project is approved, because then we know what mitigation is going to occur.
I would be happy to make a motion, but I mean, I would like my motion to be all offers and all conditions as discussed and presented. I realize that leaves number 14 as included.
Okay. I don't know that there is a strong sense one way or another about that. Are there people who are strongly opposed to number 14? Really, is there a majority here who's strongly opposed to number 14? If so, if not, then I think we roll with all of them.
That'll label one vote. I would move to recommend adoption of the offers and conditions as discussed and as amended, as the case may be.
Is there a second?
I'm not, did we get a sense of how are we supposed to register our opposition to 14?
Raise your hand.
We'll do a quick straw vote. Anybody who really doesn't want to see number 14 in there, raise your hand so Doug can see it right now. 1, 2, 3. Anybody else? I'm only seeing 3 hands. I'm afraid I don't consider that a consensus, so we'll vote on them all at once. And all of this gets revisited Thursday night. There's been a motion. Is there a second? The motion is to put them all in.
Second,
Okay. So the motion is, and which has been seconded, is to recommend accepting the applicant's offers and applying the conditions 1 through 14. Okay, wait a second. We didn't renumber them, but we know what we're doing here. Let's hope so.
As amended and discussed.
Right. So they'll be
And renumbered.
There'll actually only be 13 of them. All in favor of that motion, kindly raise your hand. There are only 8 of us who can vote. 1, 2, where Doug can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
It's 6.
6, yeah,
Okay.
I count 6.
Okay. All opposed, kindly raise your hand. Brian is opposed. Trip is opposed. Okay, it's 6-2. That means there'll be no abstentions. Okay, that motion passes. Let's talk about benefits and detriments.
Okay, I'm gonna sign off since it seems like a handy spot. Sorry and good luck.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I gotta go too. I got a DOT meeting in 5 minutes on the drainage for Five Corners. Alex, you can transfer the mute part to somebody else.
can somebody make me Linda?
Yep.
Change my name?
Okay. Alice, once you take care of that, can you put the benefits and detriments up?
Yep.
Did you?
I forgot to tag the primary
You did not?
concern, so the IBC might want to just indicate which ones are primary.
Well, I think water quality has to be primary because it's a major issue. Habitat would have to be primary. Impact on abutters would be primary.
I would add open space as primary.
You can put that into any commissioner who identifies something, it becomes primary. Island housing needs is primary.
Traffic,
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
character,
Does any commissioner wish to identify anything else? We can always do it as we go through. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Okay, water quality is been identified as a primary factor. This is going to generate a lot of nitrogen, and they are going to mitigate it. And if they are unsuccessful, they're going to come back to land use planning and possibly have to further mitigate it.
Doug, this is Kate. I have a question about this in terms of what the DEP is now trying to publish as acceptable standards. Will this meet their standards? The new ones that they're now trying to enforce over on the Cape?
Sherry, do you have any idea, or is it too early to know what's going to be put in here? And obviously, if DEP requires more, they're going to have to do it no matter what we do. Right, Sherry?
Yes, DEP right now, if they don't come up with a watershed management plan, they have a plan that's in for 20 years, then, and if they're not going to do that, then they have to put in IA systems if within the next 5 years. So this falls right into what the DEP is requiring, because they're asking for IA systems right now. Either put together a plan or put in the IA systems. That's the proposal that's on the table right now. So this will meet it.
The applicant is going to have IA systems, and if it ever expands, it's going to be on the sewer for the phase 2. So they'd be meeting the DEP.
Definitely.
Plus, we are requiring them. Actually, they are offering, because we would otherwise require it, to mitigate the excess nitrogen. So they're going beyond really what DEP would require. as I understand it. Okay, since they're mitigating, I don't know that it's a negative. But
I think we're hoping it's neutral.
yes, I think that's the best we can hope for.
Can I just ask if the LEPC's understanding is that those additional dormer units would have to come back as a separate modification later?
I think we should be working on this as approving up to 48 units.
So that would include the dormer units.
Yes, they would have to mitigate them. Ben, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had just a question on how we account for, if they were to restrict developable land, how do they measure the potential load on that property? It's just the entire, like, it's just the watershed formula? Is that right?
Sherry, do you know the answer to that?
It's just the acreage in the watershed formula?
It is. It's in the formula that's in the water quality policy. The amount of the acreage and the adjusted nitrogen load for that property.
Okay.
And they have to bring it back to AUPC for review and approval. So we would be able to make sure that it meets our calculation and our policy. Anything further on water? Okay, let's move on. They have a stormwater plan. Habitat. This is pretty special land. It's undeveloped. It's priority habitat, most of it. They are conserving 1.9 acres permanently. They're preserving the existing knoll. And the new access road has been located, or the potential new access road has been located to avoid further breaking up of that habitat.
Yep, that's what I wanted to address, because they did explain that the location of the access road is to prevent the whatever the proper word is, the division of the habitat. And that's got to be in here someplace, because I do think that the location of the potential road to the back was well thought out, but it took a while to get them to say that. And it should be someplace noted here.
It is. It's in the parenthetical at the end of that bullet that's been highlighted. And they they have to commit to what Mass Wildlife has required, or there'd be a take. I think Ben is next.
Yeah, I have to jump here at 6:30, so I'll try to be quick. Obviously, I think these are the two biggest detriments to this development, and I would make note that they come woefully under the open space policy requirements from the MVC. Of course, the town of Oak Bluffs doesn't have the same open space policy, so they weren't really considering that when they put their RFP together for this project, which is what's causing a bit of concern. I think this is the piece that is most detrimental of this type of project, and I think it's something that we're just going to have to recognize. But I have to go, and we'll pick it up on Thursday. Thanks.
And just to follow up on your point, Ben, there is a bullet on the next page that a chart that Alex has included that shows exactly how this measures up to our open space policy. Linda, you have your hand up, or is that left over? Okay.
That's supposed to go away.
Okay. I think it's fair to say, I hope I won't be contradicted, that both the habitat and open space aspects of this, there's no way it can't be negative. It is negative. They're reducing the habitat and the open space. Is there any disagreement with that among commissioners? Okay, let's move on to the next item. Energy. going to be all electric. It's going to use solar. They will have charging stations. Okay, it's not been identified as a primary factor. We can move on. Traffic and transportation.
Kate Putnam, raise your hand.
Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, I had a point about that, which is that they have not cited the buildings to be most efficient in the solar collection. And this bothers me because even if they add solar panels, it's still a waste of material. Where if they had oriented the buildings a little bit differently, they'd be better able. So I see this as best neutral because they're not doing the most efficient thing they possibly could.
Okay, we'll note that it's neutral then. Fred?
Yes, I mean, I think anytime we have somebody meeting a policy, it's neutral. We don't give them a benefit for meeting our policy. I do take exception to the fact that thinking that what they've testified to is that they're going to generate as much electricity as they would if everything was on a south-facing roof. So yes, maybe they didn't go to 98% of what they could have done, but that would have affected the layout of the whole project. So I think what they've done is certainly good enough and much better than what we see in many other projects. So I don't fault them for it. But as I said, when we have somebody who meets our policy, it's not a benefit, it's just not a detriment.
Yep, so it's neutral. There are always design trade-offs. And this is a design trade-off. You can't have it all. Persons and property, traffic and transportation. I believe we don't have any evidence that it is going to be a detriment. I can't say that it, well, I mean, I guess we don't have, the experts report was that it will not have a significant detrimental effect, but adding this much traffic at that particular location, I can't see how that's a benefit or even neutral. It's got to be a detriment to some degree. Is there any?
I disagree with that. I think that this project is really a fairly small contribution to the traffic in that area. When we get to the next possible project, and then I think, well, I don't know. I mean, I think this is only a minor detriment if you look at the proportion of the traffic that it will generate to the traffic that's already on that road.
I would agree. It's only a minor detriment, but it's not neutral. It's adding vehicles, but it would only be minor. Let's go to a character and identity. These have not been identified as primary. Any comments? Cultural resources? We just don't know about that. We'll have to find out. Landscaping and lighting. Impact on abutters. That's a primary.
Doug, do they need a 20-foot pole?
I believe the 20-foot poles are not on the access road, the potential access road. They're not going to have any there. I thought the next to last bullet.
Yeah, all
They're
24.
not going to do it.
All 20-foot poles are gone.
Because it's referenced up above.
And then taken out down below. So probably.
Yeah.
So
Where is it referenced?
I don't see where it's referenced above.
Above impact to abutters in the
Oh yeah.
second bullet
Yes.
point in landscape and lighting.
So we can take that out. That's not going to happen. Okay. Look, the impact to abutters is not a good thing. It's a negative. There's no doubt about that. The applicant is offering to try to mitigate it to the best they can. Well, not the best they can, but without redesigning the whole thing. Island housing needs.
A big benefit.
That's why
The
we're having,
overwhelming benefit.
right. Okay. Anything else on this, or is that the end? No, but there's more. Municipal, likely minimal impact on municipal services and taxpayers. I guess that's true. Public facilities. I don't know that reduce the available capacity in the future. It's going to be true of any development at all.
Right.
I'm not sure that makes sense.
Doug, if I may, the
Go ahead.
first phase that you're reviewing is entirely on a septic system, so we're not taking any capacity.
Correct.
You know, when phase 2 comes before you and there is sewer capacity and it will hook up,
You got to
then
come
that
back to
might
us
be the
anyway.
case, but right now we're not taking any capacity.
Yeah, I think this should be revised, Alex, so it says that currently it won't impact. Okay, that's fine. This is in some ways consistent with the island plan. And it is consistent with municipal development ordinances.
Can we go back to municipal services?
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so we don't know what the demographics are of this project. I mean, if there's a whole bunch of kids living there, then that certainly has an impact on municipal services, and taxpayer money. If it's a whole bunch of elderly people, that's also a concern. So I'm not sure we can. I think that has to be neutral because we don't know who's going to be living there.
This is a yes or no section. It's not a benefit detriment section.
Okay.
But how can we make the assumption that it has minimal impact on municipal services and taxpayers, not knowing what the demographics are of the people living there?
Well, I mean, if in fact it's housing for people who already live on the island, it's not to entice other people over here to live. They're already impacting the town and the island already.
Right, but perhaps in other towns and not necessarily in Oak Bluffs.
You could revise it to say, we don't have sufficient information to determine the impact of municipal services.
Oh, yeah, I just think that's the truth. I mean, I don't think there will be a huge impact, but we just don't know.
Okay. Okay, there are a number of hands up here. Linda, Fred had his hand up. I don't know if it's up still. And then Craig, go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, and I would like to say that this number of structures is going to have an impact, a potential impact on the fire department. I mean, anytime you build a house, it's something that might catch on fire. This is a bunch of them. And I just think we can't quite say that it does. Now that we've got this new wording, but I think it pretty clearly has at least a minimal impact on municipal services.
Fred, did you have a further comment?
Yeah, in this section of 829, these things are in fact yes or no. They're not benefit or detriments. So we can make a determination, but yeah.
With that, if you look what it says, 15E, favorably or adversely affect provision.
Right. I mean, we could certainly say we don't know enough to make a finding.
That's what we're going to say. Craig?
I think we're good where we are.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Public facilities. Use efficiently or burden unduly existing public facilities. I don't think there's a problem with the way we put that. Consistency with regional plan. Yes and no. Municipal door, it's contingent on a comprehensive permit. Is it appropriate? Go ahead, Fred.
Also, yeah, just for consistency with municipal development ordinances,
Yeah.
I would refer us to section 14C of 839, which says a proposed development is consistent with municipal development ordinances and bylaws, or if it is inconsistent, the inconsistency is necessary to enable a substantial segment of the population of a larger community of which the municipality is a part to secure adequate opportunities for housing, education, and recreation. So this is certainly permissible under the act.
Okay. And finally, is it appropriate or essential in view of the alternatives?
I think it is both appropriate and essential, given the dire housing situation that we have on the island. We're looking into some other mitigations island-wide, but I think we're going to have to do a few bigger projects to get us even close, and it's something that is achievable in the short term, which I think is also very important.
Any other commissioner comments on these benefits and detriments?
Yeah, I just want to say, when it says appropriate or essential, I guess the answer is both, because it's necessary.
Okay. Okay, well, we've reviewed the offers, we've reviewed the conditions, we reviewed the benefits and detriments. Would anyone wish to make a motion regarding approval or approval with conditions? Go ahead, Fred.
I would
It's just a
move that we recommend to the full commission to approve this project with the offers and conditions that we've already voted on.
Second.
Is there further discussion? Okay, all in favor of that recommendation, kindly raise your hand where Doug can see it. 1, 2, 3. Linda, you've gone dark.
Yeah, I sorry, disappeared.
That's quite all right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I think Kathy and Christina can vote now that, or unless they're ineligible, but there are fewer than 8.
Okay, well, just to be on the safe side, Kathy, would you like to vote? Are you eligible? Okay, there you go. And Christina doesn't know because she doesn't know she's eligible. So of the 7 commissioners who could vote, it was all in favor. That concludes this. We will make that recommendation to the full commission on Thursday, and we will have deliberation on Thursday. And it is now 6:45, and Fred, you can take over. You want to do some of Stone Bank tonight? You've got another 45 minutes if you wish to use it.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Okay.
I think we can take a look at this and get it started anyway.
Okay. I am recused. I will leave this to Fred and Alex. Have fun, everybody. See you Thursday.
Okay. Can we, I guess we should just determine who is still here that's still eligible.
Unfortunately,
you
I
know,
don't have
Alex?
a list of who's eligible or not. I'd have to check with Lucy on that.
What are we gonna do?
Well,
We're doing
that's
the post-hearing review of Stonebank Restaurant.
I'm not sure if we don't know who is eligible to deliberate and work on this, it seems kind of pointless to be
Well, let me
discussing
pull
it.
up one thing that might help.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say it's worse than pointless, because if we let people participate who are ineligible, it could pose legal issues.
Brian?
So does this go back to the beginning of time with this project, or?
No, this is just for the modification request.
Okay,
So anybody who heard the modification public hearings is eligible.
okay. I think I'm good, but I wasn't good from the very beginning, so.
Right.
So if Kathy has rehabilitated, then she's eligible.
I think she left.
Okay, and I don't think Carol is eligible. And that's all that was of concern as of January. So if nothing has changed since then, we did have a hearing. The hearing closed on January 12th. But I don't have, I'd have to check my notes to see who was present then. Hang on. So looks like on the 12th, we had Jeff, Fred, Peter, Tripp, Ernie, Doug, Jay, Kathy Newman, Brian Smith, Kate Putnam, Joan Malkin. Christina Brown was not here on the 12th, so I believe she'd be ineligible.
Wasn't I there?
I don't see you listed on the 12th.
Then
Yeah, so
I
you
shall
might
be
also be ineligible.
Yeah, I'll be silent.
Tripp
So
was
we have-
there, Brian was there,
So we have 4, right?
Kate was there, Fred was there, so that's at least 4.
Okay.
I think that's probably good.
Yeah, I think 4 is sufficient to work. Less than 4 is a little dubious. All right. So Alex, why don't you bring us up to date here?
Okay. So let's go over what new information has come in. Again, the hearing closed on the 12th and the record closed last week. During that interim, we received some new information. One commissioner had asked for a master plan for the property, kind of outlining what has happened there so far and what's still to happen. In response to that, the applicant provided an overall site plan, elevations, updated elevations of the buildings, including most of the sides of each building. Also a project narrative explaining what's happened and stating that no further work is expected on the site. Those were presented as as-built plans. We wouldn't consider those as-built because the project is still under construction. But we've added those to the record as overall site plan, elevations, and project narrative. Memo from the applicant covering questions surrounding solid waste, including some more details about the proposed trash area and the capacity of tote containers in that area. The composting process, just the fact that there will be, according to the applicant, there will be almost no plastic waste. Cooking oil will be recycled. More information about both reusable and disposable items and the takeout proposal. A memo regarding a proposed security and fencing plan. That would include the fence that was already built in front of building B2 in the parking lot, which as proposed would extend farther toward the water, including across deeded access to the property to the north and in between the existing bus shelters. The fencing plan would also fence in the residential courtyard on the western part of the site, which was a concern, including among planning board members, since that area also includes businesses and is part of the business district. So the fencing would conflict with that. The LEPC should weigh in as to whether the fencing plan needs to be submitted as a separate modification. There will be other modifications coming to address various compliance issues. So this would potentially be worked into that, and there'll be more time to look at this fencing plan, which was not fully presented or discussed during the hearing for this project. We have a letter from the planning board outlining what concerns they still had at the end of the public hearing. 2 additional letters from abutters and updated staff report. So this was the fencing plan submitted for the area around building D2, which is shown here. So that would go across this area here, which was originally presented as the access to the property to the north, which there's been some problem actually establishing because there's a bollard in the way. So this would fence that off except for pedestrian access, which would appear to conflict with that part of the initial proposal. And then the area between the bus shelters would be fenced off also. This fence here is already in place. It actually goes farther east than that. So this plan isn't accurate. And then there would be trellises against the side of the building here. Also, the buildings are not labeled correctly. This was the overall site plan presented. So this shows the proposed fencing in blue. The fencing around the courtyard here was not presented during the hearing for this project. There's also fencing in the area south of the restaurant to contain trash, I assume. And then again, the fencing proposed for this part of the site. Oh, Rich Salzberg Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, could you bring up the fence again along the parking lot? I just wanted to, just for the commissioner's knowledge, I went down there just to take a quick look at it, the fence on my way back from the commission today, so I get my head around it. And to my observation, the bottom of that fence is actually an earthen retaining wall. I craned my head around the corner of the fence, and for all intents and purposes, that's what the bottom of that looks like to me, is an earthen retaining wall. Just to paint the picture, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to say, I think because this wasn't really presented at the public hearing, I don't think it belongs in this modification because we haven't really had time for any kind of feedback from anybody really. And this is the kind of thing when we get it at a while the record is still open, we would I would say if we got this kind of information and it was critical, we would reopen the public hearing. I think in this case, and I would offer the applicant the option that we would not consider the fencing plan as part of this modification, so that we could then make a decision on the rest of this restaurant application, or we can reopen the public hearing and, do the whole thing at once. Sam, do you have a feeling about that?
I certainly do.
I thought you might.
Well, this was only submitted because, you all asked for a master plan for the property. This was completely, I thought, unrelated to the restaurant application, and I think it ought to be dealt with separately. It has nothing to do with the restaurant.
I believe that's what I just said. So if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
So we're going to put this this fencing out of our mind while we're doing this post-public hearing review because it's a little, it hasn't been really vetted by the public.
But Fred, when somebody comes back for a modification, doesn't it open up the entire project for review?
Well, in some cases, yes, but he does have some other modifications that he's going to bring back to us.
Okay.
So, like I said, this has not had sufficient public vetting, I think, to make a decision on it at this time.
Okay.
Anyway, this is just the existing site plan for that part of the property, just to refresh people's memory. These were the elevations provided for building, what we're calling Building E, the kitchen building. Other elevations were also provided that are in the record, but this is the kitchen building. This shows the second floor deck, which has already been built, which originally was supposed to end about there. So that's part of this modification. And the other sides of that building. Just to quickly go through the planning board concerns, those covered the need for mitigation for odor, waste, sound, and lighting, the effect that the restaurant will have on public access through the site. There will still be a public walkway connecting Main Street to Union Street and to the town parking lot, although there will now be food runners and bussers going across that public walkway. I think the planning board was concerned about that. They also raised the concerns about needing to balance density and open space on the site, noting that what was originally presented as open green area will now be restaurant seating. And then they also wanted clarification as to who would maintain the landscape and the proposed pocket park just northwest of the restaurant area. There were concerns about alcohol sales. As proposed, there would be alcohol could be sold without food. I believe the town bylaw would limit that to 35% of total sales. The planning board asked or would expect there to be some sort of monitoring to ensure compliance with that, and would want the bar to close with the close of food each day, with the close of food sales each day. And then they also raised concerns about the proposed fencing around the courtyard because of the commercial uses in there, but that will be addressed as a separate modification now.
Yep.
And that's all the new information.
Okay. We have anything new and different by way of offers, Alex?
There were no offers.
Okay. So basically the offers are the applicant's presentation.
Yep.
Okay.
So we have the possible conditions and benefit and detriments notes to look at tonight.
There's a new letter there from Stam and Pashman.
Yeah.
Yep, the new letter from Stan and Pashman. Do you want to look at
On
that?
the screen.
Yep, just a minute.
Sure.
So here's the letter from Peter and Nancy Stam, the immediate abutters to the north. This relates mostly to the fencing, which again will be a separate modification.
It's nothing really bad there. What about the other letter?
I think Alex has to plug in his computer.
Yep. Give me a minute.
I thought it was mine.
I know. Everybody's checking their plug, right?
Okay, the other letter.
Not on a butter. Okay, thanks.
All right. So, Alex, condition?
Yep.
Z.
So these are based on either statements from the applicant, requests from abutters, or statements by commissioners during the public hearing.
Can I ask for a clarification on number 5? Does that mean the restaurant, you're talking about live music?
That would be any amplification, so recorded or live music.
Well, how are you gonna, if you're gonna play music in the restaurant, if it's not live music, it's recorded, so it has to be amplified to some extent, or
I think that would be a question about whether that is appropriate, I guess.
well,
It's all kind of music and how loud it is. I mean, a little general background music. I don't know. It'd be probably, if it's all outdoors, it'd be hard to hear anyhow unless it was blasting.
Right. That I think that's kind of the point, that because this is obviously all outdoors, that's why there's a concern about this, that to get it over the ambient noise and the outdoor situation, it might be objectionable. Does anybody have a strong opinion about this one way or the other, on number 5 here?
I just think we should come up with a better definition of what amplification is. I mean, I get it, but if there's some music playing in the background, consider that the same as amplification of instruments. So maybe we can reword that somehow or think about that some more.
Yeah, it's when we've tried to come up with standards before, it's really hard.
Is there a definition of what constitutes fast food? Because I've never been in a fast food restaurant that could serve 70 people at once. So I'm curious as to what the standards are here.
So fast food was referred to in context of Title V, which provides guidance for different uses, guidance to the town.
Okay. So if it's fast food, that means that there won't be anything needing to be washed. But I'm also seeing proposals to use glass and other things in order to mitigate the trash stream. So I'm trying to understand how to balance and weigh these things, because I feel like I'm seeing inconsistencies here.
I think we need to get down a little farther before we
Okay.
when we get into those. And
Go
so
on.
I don't know if anybody has an idea about the amplification condition, something that
If you add music to this, it's only going to get noisier because people are going to try to talk over the music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps the applicant in the next few days can come up with a better definition of what they're trying to do and difference between that and amplification of instruments.
Well, they really can't, because the public record is closed.
All right.
I don't think there's any physical difference between amplification of instruments or of recorded
Music.
Music.
Right, but
I-
we all know there is a difference, so we should.
See, I'm gonna have a mariachi band there. I love it.
That's right. You could have an acoustic guitar player every night.
Uh-huh.
How about a decibel level at the property line?
We have looked at such things before, but because your property line's really close on the parking lot side there.
We worked through this at the bowling alley, and we had there's an ambient noise, an ambient level in the neighborhood.
Right.
It'd be related to that.
Very, very different neighborhood though, Sam.
Yeah, well, you got, well.
So I'd say, why don't we kind of, we're not going to make a final determination tonight. I think it's something that might be, it would be certainly up to the full commission to make a decision on. So let's move along here.
Number 7 has changed a bit since I sent these out last week. So staff worked together to refine this. So we should just read over it here.
This is another one that confused me because it suggested that people were going to work double shifts. First here and then go to Backdoor Donuts and start working the late night shift. Is that something that you can compel employees to do? Or at what point are they allowed to say 40 hours a week is my limit and still be entitled to benefits?
I think the testimony was that some of the taqueria employees would also be Backdoor Donut employees, but I don't think there was anything said that they wouldn't be working.
The idea was never to abuse them and make them work double shifts. It was just, and the idea was that depending on demand and how things work, that there would be some efficiency and economy of scale inside the business model to put people where they were needed.
Makes sense to me.
All right. Let's keep scrolling here. 8 is our standard condition. As is
in the last one, we took out the thing about nitrogen soluble once the plants were established, but we're leaving it in here where the water table is even closer to the harbor. Does that make sense?
It was before it was no irrigation until the plants are established.
But it says only slow release water soluble nitrogen source fertilizers may be used. We're saying that shouldn't happen in the southern woodlands. And yet here we're allowing it again.
Southern tier still had this part in there. We just added no irrigation until the plants are established.
This is a condition that is our standard condition.
Oh wait, no, sorry. We took this out because there was the southern tier had made an offer to not have any fertilizers.
Right.
Well, there's no nitrogen limitation on the harbor. This is in the harbor watershed.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are nitrogen limitations everywhere on the island because of the island-wide PCPC.
All right. I think we can keep scrolling.
That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Right, that's that.
That
music question, the amplification question, geez, that probably should be left up to the town and to Sam. He doesn't want to blast people out of there. You know, I mean, that's a touch and go. You're a sound guy, Fred. I don't know how to handle that now or later, you know? Because it may be certain times of the day, a little gentle music, you know, unless they're gonna have entertainment one night a week. I don't think he's gonna have to do that to a place full of people.
I guess my feeling is that it becomes very contentious with neighbors to, you know, send somebody out with a dB meter to read when they think things are exceeding it. And easy, a no amplification is pretty easy to enforce. And also pretty much the town regulations are pretty lax on this. I'm not sure about Tisbury, but I know in Oak Bluffs, the standard is that it shouldn't reach the property boundaries. It shouldn't be above the level of conversation at the property boundaries. I guess I would be willing to leave it to the town if that is everybody's wish. But again, I don't think we're going to decide it tonight because
Well, Sam, what do you think?
people here.
What does Sam have to say?
I believe he wants it.
Well, you want some kind of, you're trying to create an ambiance in a restaurant with lighting and sound and so on that makes people want to be there. It's you know, frankly, for me, an older person, I don't want this. It becomes harder to hear, to have conversation when there's loud music. So I think that's not the intention at all. It's just to have some background music so that to warm the atmosphere. I don't know how you turn that into a condition, but that's.
Well, I think
All
the
right.
condition, I think the condition is what the town bylaws are, and we leave it up to the town.
I think that is certainly something that we can that can be proposed at the full commission when they look at this. So
Yes,
Alex, why don't we just you want to just make this in red or make it a maybe? And that's just a note that thank you. Does anybody else have any other concerns or conditions? I know Kate was talking about what the planning board had asked about the non-reusable items, but obviously that becomes a problem with their wastewater situation.
Well, if it's non-reusable, does that move it from fast food into a different category?
Apparently,
They say, I
Title-
don't know too many fast food restaurants that use glasses or that serve alcoholic beverages. So I'm just not familiar with how it's being defined here.
So my understanding is that Title V isn't like the final word. It's the town uses Title V as guidance, but then they can apply their own discretion as to how much wastewater they think the restaurant will generate. So I think, it's possible that this wouldn't strictly fall into the fast food category in Title V because they're using some reusable items. But the town, I think, from what I heard from the town and from the DEP, uses its own discretion to allow the wastewater flow.
And if I may, they said that what they will do is monitor the use, and if the use increases beyond the flow allowed, they will say either reduce the number of seats or come back and try to get some more flow. I mean, it's sort of self-regulating.
Yeah, I think the concern was the fact that all of the service items were throwaways. And in a bar, obviously there's a lot of glassware that could be washed and reused.
Yeah. also the planning board can condition this themselves, beyond what you're suggesting, and I think they intend to do that. My sense.
I have a thought that might, in fact, occur. I'm just not sure what their standing is to do that, if they have the authority to do that. But again, we'll find out later.
Yeah, 10-4.
I have a couple other questions too.
Yes,
I
Kate.
mean, I'm concerned about rising sea levels and the fact that the water table here is what, a foot above ground, is a foot above the water table, and what that means for runoff in terms of where is it going to go and how's this going to work. So that's one question that I have. I have another question. I am curious about adequate bathroom facilities for 70 people. And are there regulations that say you have to provide X number of stalls if you're going to feed 70 people? Again, I don't know what the regulations are, so I'm asking the question. Last but not least, if this is all throwaway, then once a week trash service seems inadequate to me.
All right, I believe that it is up to the building inspector to determine how many what the bathroom size is in relationship to the building capacity. It's
This
certainly
is
nothing that we
outdoors, so
do.
it's not in a building, so I don't know how that plays out.
Well, it's a restaurant serving a certain number of people, so it's certainly not anything that we ever deal with.
Okay.
You want to move
That's
on
right.
to the benefits and detriments?
Yeah, because let's hear from Rich, because he raised his hand so nicely.
I perhaps to help answer Commissioner Putnam's question, perhaps the applicant could reiterate what the allotted flow is for the project, and perhaps what he estimates the flow is for the restaurant, and that may help at least to some degree answer the commissioner's question.
The restaurant has been allotted 1,400 gallons a day. And once again, the sewer department has said that they will monitor this, and if we exceed it, they will either reduce the number of seats or require us to request more flow. This has been pretty exhaustively looked at throughout this whole process. It's been going on now for more than a year. And all these, there's been just so much testimony on this matter. And I can start at the beginning again if you'd like, but the gist of it is what I just said, that we have 1,400 gallons assigned to the restaurant.
I think that'd be under the 1,400 gallons, especially if they could, paper plates on those little wicker things that they put under the paper plate and the throwaway stuff. Jesus, by the time they recycle that stuff and take it to the wherever it winds up going, it's still less for labor and water and washing the dishes. It's because it's it's very informal atmosphere anyhow, and a lot of people will be taking it with them.
There's
Let's-
a very detailed plan for how each type of piece of trash is dealt with.
And yeah, I would encourage everyone to look at the plan that has been submitted on waste and all of that. In light of the hour, I think we should look at our benefits and detriments.
Again, I forgot to tag the primary, so we could just identify those as we go through it.
Yep. I would guess that water quality would be a primary. And I think solid waste probably would come up there as well. Stormwater, yep.
Anyone feel that open space is the primary?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Traffic?
well, let's go back to, since we're just talking about it, let's talk about the environmental, the first section here as a whole. It looks to me like almost all of these are detriments. I think I don't see there's any way around that unless somebody has a contradictory opinion. If not, we'll keep going. And so persons and property, traffic and transportation, I think this is probably a primary. It's obviously a busy area, and there'll be an increase in both foot traffic and vehicular traffic in an already congested area.
Is there a way to make sure that the residents don't go off and do something and come back and find that some guests of the restaurants in their parking space? Is there any way to protect that? I'm just curious.
That would be up to Mr. Dunn and the homeowners association, I guess.
Right, okay, fair enough. As far as we're concerned, a car is a car.
These are all the access and demand management strategies that were
Right.
recommended. That would be in the possible conditions. Character, anyone feel that's a primary factor?
I think it's neutral.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the B1 district.
I see the housing issue as a negative right now, because what I'm hearing is it's highly dependent upon Patrick Lyons being the manager of the restaurant and providing the housing. And I don't know that we can condition that upon, if Sam doesn't get a deal with this party, him moving on to somebody else. And so I sort of wonder at this point whether there should be some condition on whoever is operating the restaurant, not geared towards one specific person to provide housing.
I think the way we would write this is that it is the obligation of the owner of the restaurant, the lessee of the restaurant, or this is, yeah. So
Okay.
it's the
He's a buyer.
applicant. Yeah.
He's a buyer.
Right. Okay. So it's not person specific, even though we're saying that there are people involved, just to, I guess, just to say that, but it doesn't really make a difference.
This would seem like a primary factor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, what the housing situation is dependent upon this particular owner providing housing, as opposed to, I don't know how to do it, but it seems to me it's dependent upon the relationship with Backdoor Donuts to share the same
Right.
employees in the same housing. And I don't know, what happens if they become severed in some fashion.
It just says the applicant or the restaurant owner, so that could be someone else in the future.
Yeah, I think what we've done, and we specifically have done it like at the marina, they identified specific properties that they were going to house people in. I think what we do is make sure that we say that it's these properties or their equivalent must be provided.
So they did show the location of current, at least for next year, for this year, what the properties will be.
Right.
The way this is written now, I see it as a negative.
Well, you could also flip that and say it's a positive, because now we have two venues that employ people that aren't competing with each other for available housing. They're going to be working at both venues and only take up, one housing spot rather than two housing spots per employee.
I'm curious if Backdoor Donuts has 20 employees. I'm and how many are going to be here? Only 10 of them would have access to housing through Backdoor Donuts. It seems to me that we shouldn't be reliant upon Backdoor Donuts to provide housing for a restaurant in Vineyard Haven. I think the restaurant in Vineyard Haven has to do their own job of providing housing.
It's the same owner. I mean, so the owner's going to be providing or locating the housing for his two locations.
Right. But I think, as we always do, we do need to be mindful of the fact that if next month the Patrick Lyons sells this business, as he can do, to another party, we need to make sure that what we've written applies to any person running, a business at this address. So I think we need to do a little work on this in that regard.
I got some remarks to say about this situation. That the Backdoor Donuts crowd and the crowd that would be doing the Mexican restaurant deal is a lot younger and more informal, and they can walk to work, and the type of thing that a 17-year-old kid who's here for the summer, that's the kind of a job he could get. He could walk to work from where he's staying. I mean, we have a very large summer community that I get approached all the time, right? Because I'm in town, kids come knock on the door, and many times I've used them and they're great. The other thing that's interesting, if he sticks with the paper plates, the Woodland Market, which I eat at a lot up on the state road, is 7 to 7, and it's all paper. Everything he's got and he's always had. They don't wash dishes there. I mean, they wash their pots, and it's a pretty successful, well-handled situation. And I have no doubt in my mind that whoever winds up running the store down there it would be much easier to control and opens the door to more informal waiters, waitress type of situation, because an awful lot of it just carry out. But that's a problem for the owner and the operator. If somebody really has a problem or acts up, then we got to back them up. But it's not our job.
Trip Woodland doesn't serve alcohol.
Excuse me?
Woodland doesn't serve alcohol.
Well,
So this is not the same, and 17-year-olds aren't allowed to carry alcohol around.
It's a lot of, you don't have to be 18 to serve alcohol. The law is different for the people that are working there.
All right, let's, I think we are probably not going to get through this whole thing tonight. And I think there are some areas that need to be revisited a little bit, especially in terms of the housing situation. So as Doug pointed out previously, because this is not up for deliberation and decision this week, we have a little more time on it. And also, since there are only 4 of us here, and we don't have everything nailed down here, I don't think it makes sense to try and do a vote on recommendation tonight. So with that, I will bid you all a farewell, and we'll see you next time.
Are we up next week, Fred, next Monday? To finish this next Monday?
Alex, have you,
That should be doable. Let me confirm either tonight or tomorrow.
And
okay,
Fred, can we just pick up where we've left off and not start from scratch?
yeah, yeah.
Good.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Night.
That's it.
Good night.
Night.